How do you eat an elephant? Well, who eats elephants anyway? Writing a book isn't magic. It isn't rocket science or the next discovered secret. It's simply writing consistently over time. Some aspiring authors will do it and some won't. And that's the difference between prolific authors and wannabe authors. 500 words a day, 3,500 words a week, 15,000 words a month, and 50,000 words in 100 days. And that's the minimum because what we say is write 500 words a day. But to hit that bar, maybe you write 505 words or 520 words, or maybe some days you write 1,000 words. 500 is the minimum bar. But by hitting that bar, in 100 days, you'll have written a minimum of 50,000 words. 100 days is only 3.5 months. For those of you that went to college, it's about the length of a university semester. In one college semester, you could draft your book. Isn't math exciting when you think of it that way? What about journal writing? I keep talking about writing in your journal whenever you're stuck on the manuscript, or writing in your journal on the weekends, or writing in your journal anytime you want to. But that's not manuscript writing. And so if you're writing all these words in your journal, doesn't that mean that your manuscript's not getting written? That's the math. You're right. The math is pretty exciting in that when we look at how numbers add up over time, it's pretty astounding how many words we can write in a relatively short amount of time. But the reality is that math isn't behavior and that we aren't robots. We don't sit down and crank out exactly 500 words every day, ching, next day, 500 words, ching, next day, 500 words, ching. That's not how we write. Some days we're excited about what we're working on and we can churn out words. And some days it's hard. Some days we're tired. Some days we're sick. There's all kinds of things that can get in the way of writing, and many of them are between your ears. So on those days, I just tell you, don't resist the writing. The more you resist writing, the more you pair that feeling of resistance with the behavior of not writing. And that's counterproductive to what we want to do. That's why that journal is so magical. Now, the reality is, as I've looked over my calculations of writing, and I have written millions of words now over the last several years. And as I look at it, I have written enough words that as of last week's calculation, I could have written like 32 50,000 word manuscripts, but I've only published 8 books. Now, stop for just a minute and hear how ludicrous that is, right? I have written on a daily basis for 7 full years, and I've written enough words to write 32 manuscripts, 4 times as many as I have actually published books for. But why would I be disappointed in 8 published books? That's the power of behavior. Yes, 3/4 of the words that I wrote didn't end up published. That's perfectly okay. Some of them ended up published in things like blogs, or that were, I use my journal sometimes to craft emails that I really need to think through, those kinds of things. And so they were helpful. They were helpful when I was using words to plan my week or to express prayers, those kinds of things. They were certainly helpful to me. They just weren't published. But because I would show up and write every day, I did publish frequently. And a book a year is not a bad publishing pace. And you too can easily publish a book a year simply by writing 500 words a day. If you calculate that, that would be the equivalent of more than 3 manuscripts a year. So you also would be writing a lot of words that might not get published. But because you write consistently, that is the key to being a prolific author. And if you want to write a book, or even more importantly, if you want to write multiple books, writing every day a little bit, 500 words every day, adds up to published books. Test it. See if I'm right. For 1 month, try writing 500 words a day and see what happens at the end of the month. Look at your word count and see how it works for you. Let me know in the comments below. See you next time.